Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is keeping well. You're very welcome to Lee and I's webinar in partnership with Edco. So over the next hour or so, we're going to look at practically approaching the new Leaving Cert Geography specification with a particular focus on Strand Three, the global environment. So before we jump into it, a little bit on myself. So who am I? My name is Niall Lenehan. I'm a geography and history teacher in Dunshaughlin Community College in County Meath. The author of Revised Wise Junior Cycle History with Edco, co-author of a junior cycle history textbook, A History of Change with CJ Fallon, and I've also worked as a content creator with examrevision.ie and homeschool.ie. I'm going to let my colleague Lee introduce himself now. I'm sure you've all heard of Lee, but work away there, Lee.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks very much, Niall. And yeah, I won't take up too much time, but yeah, my name's Lee O'Donnell. I'm a history, geography, and politics and society teacher in my school, Woodbrook College in Bray in County Wicklow. The Desh School, I work with a wide variety of different students from a variety of different contexts. Students, who are engaged in L2LP programs at junior cycle history and geography, and then students who are pushing and pushy for H1s at Leaving Cert as well. So wide variety of students, and yeah, it's a great place to work. Outside of that, I work in the UCD School of Education, so I'm a geography, history, and methodology lecturer there, and I also work as a dissertation supervisor and a supervisor, essentially going out to visit schools and observe PMEs during their initial teacher education training. Part of my job I love, and gives me opportunities to think about teaching a lot, think about pedagogy, and think about teaching geography, which I generally love. As Niall mentioned, we've got a junior cycle history book there. It's a history of change, and formerly I wrote The Natural World for the old Leaving Cert geography syllabus. So looking to continue the natural world and obviously adjust that to suit the context of the new Leaving Cert geography spec. I'm going to pass you back to Niall, who's going to take you through the start of the webinar, and I'll see you later to kind of look at practical approaches to writing at the new Leaving Cert geography course.
Yeah, thanks a million for that, Lee. So, a quick little roadmap for today over the next hour or so. So, we're going to start off by looking at a Strand Tree walkthrough. So, a detailed walkthrough of every strand in that to kind of decipher what we have to teach and what our students should know. Then I'm going to do a detailed walkthrough of geopolitics. Okay, very interesting strand. Something I was very excited about when I saw it on the new course. But also something that I know a lot of teachers are kind of worried about. And we feel in our new book, A World of Change, we've addressed this topic in an effective way to, I suppose, boost teacher and student understanding of the topic. We're going to look at how we embed the unifying strand in our teaching and learning through a world of change. And finally, then Lee is going to take you through developing essay writing skills as well. So, a world of change, yeah, brand new package for the new Leaving Cert Geography specification, written by Lee and I with Edco. So, I suppose a little bit about the package. So it is your main textbook. So the new course now has there's I suppose four strands in total. There's a unifying strand, strand one, two, and three, and there's no choice on the course at all. So everything is contained in one core textbook essentially. So I suppose logistically that's a bit of a change, nice change from the old course where depending on the options you went with, you might have a few different books. As well as the core textbook, we also have that as well. We have a skills book as well. You probably see with a lot of the new senior cycle courses, the books come with skills books, and I suppose they're very important for developing those key exam skills. Like the exam is going to move away from your old part one short questions, part two your A, B, and C. It's going to move away from that more towards probably what we would envision is that it'll look like more like the current junior cycle exam, and that there mightn't be a set structure. There may be students are exposed to different maps, charts, statistics and other stimuli like that, and they have to be able to react to that. So as a result, we've created a skills book to prepare students for that. So just a little bit on the textbook. So every topic in the book is constructed to support teacher planning for what a lesson will actually look like. So here we have a topic from the book here, which is factors affecting urban development. And every topic starts out off with your knowledge retrieval questions. So that knowledge retrieval, again, as Lee says, it's a buzzword in education. Very, very important for us, I suppose, really solidifying that prior knowledge that students can, answer a few questions based off what was done in a previous lesson. And those, a lot of thought has gone into those knowledge retrieval questions in that, um, you know, not only are students drawn on their knowledge of a previous lesson, but it could be information that they need for the upcoming lesson. Okay, so you're making that link there, and there's numerous knowledge retrieval boxes in every chapter. It's not just the start of a chapter. There could be 5 or 6 or 7 knowledge retrieval boxes throughout the chapter. Um, then what we have is, throughout every chapter, we've got numerous check your understanding questions. Obviously, a staple of every book. And what we've done is we've made it a key effort to differentiate these with our basic knowledge, our developed knowledge, and our advanced knowledge. So, your basic knowledge starts kind of the lower end of your Bloom's taxonomy: list, define, who, what, when. Your developed knowledge then is more your explain, describe, discuss, and then your advanced knowledge. You've got your kind of higher order critical thinking style questions like in your opinion, assess, compare, propose, create. So those kind of those action verbs that are the higher end of Bloom's taxonomy, and that kind of those analytical skills and problem solving. That's a key part of the new senior psycho specification, which we're going to talk about a little later on in the webinar. As well as that, so I was going to show you a few bits from the skills book here. So skills book, designed to, there's a wide and broad array of activities in the skills book. So, generally it follows this structure. We start off with activity 1, which is these are knowledge retrieval questions. So these are, straightforward questions in chronological order of when you cover them in the book. So, you could assign, question 1 to 5 after the first lesson and so on. Activity 2 then is keyword definitions, just to really, I suppose, get students thinking and using geographic terminology. So that's in every single chapter in the skills book. Activity 3 then is your geographical data analysis. So students will be presented with some data set, whether it's a chart, bar charts, line graphs, etc., climate graphs. Sometimes students might have to create their own bar chart by using data. But again, that unifying strand really, really emphasizes that students are geographically literate when it comes to data. So these are in every in every chapter in the skills book. Activity 4 then is a map and aerial photo analysis. Really, really important. Again, and there's it's not just your typical ordnance survey maps, your 1 to 50,000 scale. There's maps of various scales and sizes, which is that's the key wording in the unifying strand, that students they're comfortable and competent with using many maps, not just your typical OSI maps. Now, OSI, your Ordnance Survey Ireland. So some of you may have seen the circular that came out a couple of months ago, but the OSI maps have now been rebranded as Tailteann Éireann or TE maps, and the maps look a little bit different. So that's the Tailteann Éireann map there. Now it does to us as teachers, we can see it's very similar to the OSI maps. There are small differences in, some symbols are new, they're kind of more modern, they're different colours. But ultimately, it is the same. It is very similar to the OSI maps. But we have those new Tailteann Éireann maps in the book. There's loads of them throughout the book. In the Unifying Skills chapter at the start in the skills book, and then they're embedded in most chapters as well. So, those new Tailteann Éireann maps, we have them, and they're going to be very important going forward. Activity 5 then, so Lee is going to focus on this later on, and write like a geographer. Question here, name a mountain range outside of Ireland. And what it does is it gives the success criteria using the PED, point, explain, development. So I'm going to let Lee talk about that later on. So, we don't know, while there is going to be an exam paper released at some stage, we won't have a marking scheme until the first students sit the exam. So rather than try and create sample answers for you, what we're going to do, what we've done instead is, we've loads of these activities in every skills book chapter, so students get into the habit of knowing what's expected of them, knowing, getting competent and confident with that, geographic writing, using that set PED formula. But I'll let Lee talk about that later on. Activity 6 then of the skills book is a geographical inquiry activity. So this is a research question. This is something where you'll get the students, maybe on the laptops or devices or whatever you have in the school. And what this does is it prepares students for the AAC, the project that's worth 40%, by addressing those again straight from the unifying strand, those key geographical questions of what, why, how, where, etc. So this is success criteria on, based around a research question that can get students to develop those geographical skills and research questions that are going to be really important for that AAC. So, folks, what we're now going to do is we're now going to take a detailed look at Strand Three, look at all the strands, see what they, trying to decipher what they mean, and then we're going to take an in-depth look at geopolitics. So, Strand Three, the new Strand Three, it contains a number of topics from the old course. So, topics from elective Unit 4, patterns and processes in economic activities. And I'd say the optional unit 6, global interdependence. There's, if you've experienced teaching those units from the old course, you're well on your way to teaching Strand Three. Strand Three also definitely contains a few things from the old, the current junior cycle course that you'll see now as we get into it. So, Strand 3.1. So I'm going to go through the right-hand column and I'm going to refer then to the left-hand column, which is the kind of key details students need to know. So 3.1, importance and changing nature of agriculture in Ireland. So obviously, that's like kind of your primary activities at the junior cycle. And obviously you would cover agriculture when you're looking at regional geography as well in the old course. So, nothing that's too different there. So the key thing is changing nature. So how does agriculture change in terms of the, economy, environmental and social impacts? So that's a key focus there. Um, we also look at changes in agricultural practices. So the second bullet point there on the left, the intensification of ag, organic approaches, urban food production, and the use of technology. Okay, so again, a lot of students I know in my classes in Dunshaughlin, there'll be loads of farmers, and this will be right up their the alley. So they, and it's drawing on prior knowledge from junior cycle geography as well. 3.2 then explore changes in the fishing industry in Ireland. So, again, like, that's something you do cover at junior cycle level. So the key change is development of aquaculture, so your fish farming, inland fisheries and conservation as well. 3.3 then discuss the impact of European Union policies on agriculture and fisheries in Ireland. So that was a big part of elective Unit 4 on the old course. So obviously your EU policies, like your common agricultural policy and your common fisheries policy there, playing a big role. 3.4 then, so tourism. So analyze patterns and trends associated with tourism in Ireland. So again, that would be very close to your tertiary activities on the junior cycle course. Tertiary activities focus mainly on transport and tourism. So similar enough here. Now, key wording here, patterns and trends. So patterns and trends are very important words in the new course. So identifying patterns, whether in this case it's to do with tourism, but patterns to do with maybe patterns you might see on a map, depending on what the map is displaying, and trends as well. So that's important. The students maybe can look and see how tourism has changed over the last number of years. And the substrands there are tourist attractions, infrastructure, patterns and trends, including visitor numbers and revenue. So, an example of that there, like obviously, like, the patterns and trends of tourism in the last 10 years, like, it obviously gradually increased until about 2020, and then the COVID pandemic hit. So, things like that. 3.5 then, investigate the development and impacts of mass tourism in one Mediterranean coastal setting. So yeah, quite an interesting one there. So positive, negative, economic, social and environmental impacts of mass tourism. So in the book we've gone for the Costa del Sol as our Mediterranean coastal setting, and yeah, like really enjoyed writing that one, and one that probably can relate to a lot of students. Plenty of our students have been to these areas. They might have seen some of these issues for themselves. So loads of stuff to talk about there. 3.6 then, globalization. So again, this was, in the old course as well. And, globalization is obviously in the junior cycle exam. So explore the factors influencing globalization. It's the factors that can facilitate it. So things like your technology, finance, research and development, tax policies, and transport there. Again, loads of stuff that, you might be familiar with from the old course and your students could be familiar with from the junior cycle course. 3.7 then, analyze the four freedoms of the EU. So again, the EU would have been in the old course in that Unit 4 elective, and the substrand there is the opportunities and challenges presented by the four EU freedoms: free movement of goods, services, capital, and labour. So good stuff. 3.8 then, investigate the factors influencing the location of one multinational corporation in Ireland. So again, the factors. Now, in our book, we've gone with Apple down in Cork. Apple, a great example that's obviously familiar to teachers and students. And the Apple case study was done, covered by a lot of books in the old course. So we've gone with it again. Now, if you're not interested in doing Apple, what we've done is in the skills book there is a geographic research activity where it follows that same success criteria, where students have to investigate a multinational corporation, and it says, apart from Apple, the factors that influence its location. So depending on where you are in the country, there could be a multinational corporation nearby you. I had a teacher before, and they're from Longford, and I think it was Abbott. Abbott have a research and development facility in Longford, outside Longford town, which I wasn't aware of. Abbott obviously deal with pharmaceuticals. So, a great example of a multinational corporation that they did locally, and we provided the tools for you to investigate local examples of multinational corporations in the skills book as well. And the key factors then here, so obviously, go back to them. So, infrastructure and services, markets, product life cycle, raw materials, etc., etc. So quite an interesting one there. Development assistance and cooperation, again, one that absolutely, if you've done that unit 4 and your interdependence, you absolutely would be very familiar with these. So 3.9, outline approaches to and evaluate measures of development there. So obviously your protectionism, modernization, sustainable development, and then your measures, so your GDP, your GNI, Human Development Index, Gender Development Index, and I suppose the key thing to pay attention is to the command word evaluate. So like the old course, on the old course, often students might have been asked a short question on what's a strength and a weakness, say, of gross domestic product as a measure of development. So it's important that students can look at them and analyze the strength and the weakness of them. 3.10 then, analyse how different factors impact on dimensions of the HDI in Ireland and one global south country. Okay, so again, really interesting, and it gives you the factors, so climate, colonial history, conflict, peace, debt and trade, government policies, and physical landscape. So really interesting there. So obviously we've wrote about Ireland and how Ireland, obviously, like colonial history, conflict being big ones, debt and trade. So even things like the global financial crisis in 2008, Ireland's HDI ranking dropped from, I think, 5th in the world to 11th. Government policies, physical landscape, and in the global south country, what we've gone with the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and a very, very interesting case study there, and really, really good in that. Obviously, the Congo is years of Belgian colonization, but currently it is still experiencing extreme poverty, and a lot of that is to do with obviously mining and cobalt production in the country. Quite tragic now, but yeah, we've put a substantial case study on the DRC in the book, which again is very, very interesting. Just a key point here. So that term global south, when we talk about a developed country and developing country, that terminology does not appear in the new senior cycle specification. Instead, how they're referred to is global north for developed country and global south for developing country. So, you will obviously, as you cover the course and use the book, you'll see that. But yeah, terminology like that is different. 3.11 then, examine the Government of Ireland's humanitarian assistance and overseas development cooperation programme. So again, you look at two things here in particular. You look at humanitarian assistance in response to one humanitarian crisis, and then I think we've written about the Horn of Africa drought, and then the overseas development cooperation in one global south country. Okay, so how Ireland responds to two of those. Okay, so the humanitarian assistance and then one development cooperation as well. So really interesting stuff there. Okay, geopolitics, probably the one that raised quite a few eyebrows when it appeared in the specification. So 3.12, explore the concept and relevance of geopolitics. Okay, so we're going to take an in-depth look at that particular one today, 3.12. So, it's the interrelationship between geography, demographics, economics, the environment, and politics. 3.13 then, outline the influence of superpowers in geopolitics, and you have to focus on hard power and soft power. You'll see it in the sub-strand there. So a hard power like the USA, that unfortunately we're currently seeing at the moment can project its power, either, use its military or economic means to force countries into, make decisions, or soft power. So, like again, the USA is an example of this, but countries that influence the world through culture, like obviously the spreading of American sports like NFL, American brands, American TV shows, American products, everywhere. Japan is another example we've written about in the book. So obviously, things like video games, your Pokemon, loads of things like that. Japanese cuisine, Japanese cars, Japanese electronics, which, that's an example of Japan projecting their soft power around the world. Really interesting in those. And while they're things that might seem alien to some of us, these are things that they're in the world around us. That's the thing with geopolitics, is it's so current and contemporary. It's always in the world around us. And you can draw on stuff that students might hear in the news. 314 then investigate a geopolitical territorial dispute. So again, we've actually written two options on this to give you an option, because it is obviously, a geopolitical dispute can obviously be quite hard hitting and violent. So again, you need to look at a dispute that's land, maritime, or airspace. Now, to be honest, most geopolitical disputes would technically include all three, if that makes sense. So if there's a dispute on the land, there's going to be a dispute with nearby waterways and seas, and there's going to be a dispute in the airspace as well. Second last bullet point there, the actors involved. So what countries are involved in the dispute, and then the last one, the causes and impacts of and proposed and realized responses. So what caused that geopolitical dispute? What are the impacts of that geopolitical dispute, and what are the proposed or realized responses? So what has that country and maybe other countries done to try and, I suppose, like, respond to end that dispute? Okay, so you're going to look at that in a bit more detail later on. So, for an in-depth look at geopolitics, then, so 3.12, explore the concept and relevance of geopolitics. So we're going to look at detailed look at the first strand. So geopolitics as the interrelationship between geography, demographics, economics, the environment, and politics. Okay. So what does that mean essentially? Like essentially, I think I always like, to me, if I was to explain to someone, like this is probably the last thing you'll do with your 6 years. It's the very last topic on the strand, it's the last topic in our book. And what you're doing is you're getting students to draw on the knowledge they have learned throughout fifth and sixth year geography, and to make the link, well, how does that stuff influence politics, influence politicians? So geography, like obviously that's physical geography, demographics, people, economics, the environment, so climate change, and then finally politics. So how do all those factors influence political decisions? So we're gonna look at that in detail now. And the command word here is explore. So explore, and what it says in the strands is explore is to observe, study in order to establish facts. Okay. So again, these give us an idea as to the depth of treatment we need. So explore for me means that, it does, we do need to study this in quite a bit of detail. So that, another word there, interrelationship is very important. Okay, so it's interrelationship. Well, what does that mean? So it's the way in which two or more things is related to the other or other. So, for example, like how does geography impact the decision of, a political leader? How does geography impact the economics of a country? So I'm going to look at these now, what we mean. Okay,
Yeah,
so
sorry, Niall, just to jump
jumping
in
early, yeah.
there, just on the command words, I think like any any kind of dialogue or any conversation myself and Niall have had with people in the NCCA, we've obviously been looking to find out more information on the depth of treatment that's needed for different topics. And all of the feedback that we've got from the NCCA around depth of treatment is referring us to page 27 of the spec, which gives us a definition of each command word. So those command words are going to be so important and so relevant to the depth of treatment that we need to cover certain topics. And there are changes, like obviously we're only covering an hour tonight, Strand 3, but when we look at Strand 1, the physical environment, like our traditional study of rock cycle and weathering, and the command word associated with that is outlined. So that's going to significantly reduce the amount of content that we cover inside the rock cycle and with weathering karst landscapes and understanding and looking at those command words. It sounds so cliche. It kind of gives me shivers down my spine from that idea of unpacking a learning outcome from junior cycle training days a few years ago. But all the guidance that we've received on that is that's the biggest indicator of the depth of treatment, and that's what we have to go off. And we're going to come back to that later when we start looking at essay writing. But yeah, those command words, from what our understanding, are so important.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And if we look here, so this is the opening page of our geopolitics chapter in the book. So we've explore, outline, and investigate as the command words and the learning outcomes there. So give us an idea as the depth of treatment that's needed. Geopolitics, what is it? Like I'd love to be teaching it right now to a group of sixth years because unfortunately there's so much stuff to talk about in the world, particularly since Donald Trump got into power. Vladimir Putin as well has also created a lot of geopolitical talking points over the last number of years. What essentially is it? What do we mean by geopolitics? It's the relationship between geography, demographics, um, economics, the environment, and politics. So how all those things together influence the world around us, influence political leaders, influence, why a country would go to war with another. Okay, so they can influence trade. All right, so how countries trade with each other, migration, how people move between countries, language. Probably the most significant one is war and peace, particularly at the moment, because we're seeing how you might attack another country for their natural resources, etc. And studying these factors can help us understand a lot about the world around us. It can help us understand why some countries like the USA are so wealthy and powerful, and other countries like countries in sub-Saharan Africa have never thrived and always struggle. Okay, so really interesting. It's a temporary and evolving a topic. Like it's so current at the moment. Students will see it daily through news, social media, and video games, and as a result, they might be more knowledgeable than you think. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be when you're thinking this, like you have to always have your ear to the ground for the latest geopolitical event. You don't. But what I mean is when you're studying when you're doing the beginning of geopolitics and you're just studying the concept of it, you absolutely can bring in current examples that you might see in the news, okay, or encourage them to do so. So if I used to teach this topic,
And sorry, Niall, I might jump in there as
yeah,
well.
of
Just I
course,
think my other sort like obviously seeing that as well, like I can understand why someone might look at that and think, Jesus, every year do my case studies have to change? Are they ever evolving? And the answer is no. Like my other subject is politics and society. So maybe I'd be a little bit more comfortable with that ever-changing nature of you're dealing with the basic news cycle year to year essentially, but our case studies can remain the same, and the phrasing of the learning outcome inside of that enables us to use the same case studies year to year within reason. But I think making it relevant to the students is going to be so important, and linking it into the current news cycle on that day-to-day lessons with your students is going to be important. But our big case studies here are going to stay the same. They don't have to change year to year. You won't have to update a conflict that you've studied every single year. So I think really important, Niall. Yeah, thanks.
yeah, yeah, and 100%. So you'll see the case studies like we put in Israel, Palestine, and the Kashmir conflict. They've been ongoing for decades. They're most of the stuff in those case studies is the historical roots of the conflict and the proposed or real out responses. You'll see that though in a while. You don't have to go constantly checking and updating those. So if I was teaching a class this, I might start off with a question. How can natural resources like oil, coal, gas, and precious metals affect the fortunes of a country? How can the decisions of political leaders impact on surrounding nations? So there, another one, sorry, how can geography, impact on the wealth and power of a nation? So there are things I think nearly like every student in the school, nearly, if they even half have an eye on what's going on at the moment, they can probably answer those. They can probably make some kind of link, Venezuela must have oil, second one, decisions of political leaders impact surrounding nations. Well, we can see what's going on in the Middle East right now. How can geography impact on the wealth and power of a nation? Well, obviously having big oceans either side of you to trade and for defense, and having loads of natural resources like America can obviously be very beneficial. They're just some ideas of prior knowledge check questions you can use with your students. And some of these are you'll find some of these in the knowledge retrieval boxes as well throughout the book. So this is kind of just the opening page I showed you on geopolitics. This is what the second half would look like. So you have your learning intentions, your keywords box, and then there's that corresponding keywords matching activity, and then there's your knowledge retrieval based questions there. So that's typically how the bottom half of that opening page would look. So geography. So what I'm going to do now, folks, is I've kind of taken information that's in the book and I've condensed it down rather than just show you screenshots of it all and like just condense it down into a few bullet points. So geography. So what's the relevance of geography in geopolitics? Okay, so very important. So obviously, things like your mountains, rivers, and oceans can often one thing they can do is they can create the boundaries and borders between countries. Examples: Rio Grande River is the border between the U.S. and Mexico. The Andes Mountains are the border between Chile and Argentina. Okay, so there's an example there of how, if you look at the map of Europe, most European countries, the borders are drawn along mountains or rivers, whereas in the Middle East, the borders are straight. Were drawn with no geographical boundary between them, no regard for the people living there, and that's obviously, a consequence is a lot of the conflict we're seeing now. Rivers then, okay, so again, like, these are things students will have studied. They'll have done mountains and rivers and sun and etc. So why are rivers important? Well, obviously they provide drinking water, irrigation, and if you make the link between rivers, which they've studied, and population, which they've obviously studied, population map here from the book, so we can see the River Nile is huge for Egypt. 95% of the population live in the Nile River Valley. Why? Because obviously the water provides fertile land, irrigation, transport, hydroelectric power. So, it just gives you an idea of how natural resources have influenced the movement of people there. So you're making that link there straight away between geography and demographics. The interrelationship, how one affects another. Another big aspect of geography then is natural resources. So again, oil, coal, precious metals, etc. And we're seeing that now, obviously, with Venezuela. Obviously, currently in the Middle East, we're seeing that. No doubt, a reason why America are attacking is to get some regime that will allow them to purchase oil from Iran. And making links to prior conflicts there. Just going to show you, folks. So geographical skills are a key aspect of the new book and the new course, sorry, as well. So the unifying strand. So obviously I showed you the skills book earlier, but every chapter in the textbook has a number of geographical skills activities. So in this case here, this is from the chapter on geopolitics and just show two population pyramids off side by side, one in India and one in Japan. And they're obviously drawing on knowledge they learned in the previous chapter on population and applying it to a geopolitical situation. So, like India as a young population, as a result, there'll be huge emigration from that country, whereas Japan on the right has an aging population. And that obviously that'll influence their economic activity going forward. It'll influence their military power. So just examples there of using population pyramids to study geopolitics.
I might,
And then,
sorry, can I jump
yeah,
in there, Niall? Sorry,
of
just
course,
as
Dan,
well,
yeah.
like once again, talking back to the discussions that we had the opportunity to discuss with the NCCA, a lot of the feedback that we were getting was that, like, and I'm going to talk about this when we start looking at possible set structures of the exam. That set structure of our old Leaving Cert syllabus is going to be gone. We're not going to have the idea of what that exam looks like every single year. And a lot of the feedback we got from both the NCCA and from teachers when we were writing the book was around the importance of the integration of skills. Like traditionally I would teach in the old Leaving Cert geography syllabus. I would have blocked off probably a month where I taught all geographic skills, maps, aerial photographs, all the way through to your data interpretation graphs. And I would have taught it after I taught my physical geography at the end of fifth year. And it's not really going to work for the new Leaving Cert geography spec. Those skills need to be integrated, and you'll see them integrated in the book. And we're making it as much opportunity to do that with those geographical skills aspect. And I'm going to talk about the importance of that with the exam now in a few minutes. But yeah, thanks, Noah.
Excellent stuff. Economics then. So obviously, your economic strength, that can be huge. Like the stronger a country's economy, the greater their power. So the US is obviously, the largest GDP in the world, 30 trillion. A very powerful nation. They do a lot of trading. And contemporary examples there from the book. We know that the US obviously is placed, and there's a picture from the book. Mr. Trump, Mr. Trump's given us a lot of stuff to talk about, unfortunately. But his tariffs, for example, how his tariffs affected other nations, and the reciprocal tariffs as well. So they rear their head as well. And obviously them being so powerful and economically dominant, it gives them the ability to do that. So economics is a key aspect as well. The environment then, so we saw this in Greenland there. Obviously, Trump expressed interest in Greenland, and you know why? Because Greenland obviously has a lot of natural resources that have now become accessible because of the melting of glaciers. So students are linking in climate change. In the climate change chapter, we talk a lot about the melting of glaciers, ice caps, and permafrost. So we can link that in here. You know, so melting Arctic ice has opened up new areas for exploitation, but this has also, resulted in competition. Okay, so competition between the likes of the US, Russia, China, to get access to those newly exposed, I suppose, natural resources. And obviously, the thing there is the risk of conflict. Another thing we can talk about this is, the Paris Climate Agreement. So we mentioned this in the chapter on climate change, but obviously, America's withdrawn from the climate agreement twice under Donald Trump. So that's an example there of how climate agreements can also lead to disagreements and geopolitical tensions. And finally, then we've politics. So politics. So this is probably the most important aspect of geopolitics is politics. So the decisions that government leaders make. So Trump, for example, making the decision to attack Iran. Trump making the decision to capture the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And why? Well, in Maduro's case, we know that. Obviously, the Americans are open about it. They want our natural resources. So, just an example of how you can link that into a current situation. But yeah, other examples of politics, the U.S.-China relationship in terms of they trade together, but they do share a lot of they do share a lot of differences in terms of China's a communist one-party state, the U.S. is a democracy, and then Taiwan. Obviously, Taiwan is a big one. So China has viewed Taiwan as a country that should belong to them, and the US supports Taiwan. And a major reason why the US supports Taiwan is because of trade. They purchase a lot of things like semiconductors from Taiwan, and these are all things that are in the news constantly and very contemporary as well. So there's again a screenshot from the book showing military exercises in Taiwan. Another example of a geographical skills activity from this on geopolitics. So again, different types of charts, etc., that we can see. They're really important in the unifying strand. And like I said, folks, every section in the book ends with a number of questions here. So again, your basic, developed, and advanced, and we've made a key, I suppose, effort to differentiate these properly, because in the strands, we can see here, this is a line taken from the rationale of the strands, that geography supports the development of skills such as critical thinking and problem solving. So those advanced knowledge questions there, very important for developing those critical thinking and problem solving skills. So you're seeing that in loads of the junior cycle papers now. Like, I'm a history teacher as well, and there's loads of, in your opinion, to what extent, which impact had the greatest effect of our world. So a lot of opinion-based questions coming up there, and that'll be the same in the new senior cycle strand. So just going to quickly fly through now. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but geopolitical disputes, like, there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. So in our book, what we've done is, this is a screenshot from the case study. We've presented two case studies to you. So we've gone with Israel Palestine, probably like such a current one, and it's obviously been ongoing for a long time, but it's really been in the news a lot more since October 7th, 2023, the latest kind of flare up. So again, this is just a layout. Actors involved: Palestine, Israel, and the USA, obviously being hugely involved in the region. Again, another example here. So this is from the skills book, Geographical Skills. Very interesting aerial photograph showing Israel on the right, with obviously modern farms, modern irrigation techniques. But then we've got Palestine on the left, and you can see small fragmented farms, and obviously the destruction there as well. Another example from the book as well. Then we have, and I love these, is two population pyramids, from the one on the left being Palestine, the one on the right being Israel, and you can see the difference in them. Obviously, despite the fact that these are people living literally on the same land side by side with one another. So it just gives you an understanding there. And the unifying strand, so communicate formats including graphs, charts, sketches, diagrams, statistics, and geospatial data sets. So being able to apply their geographical skills to, other aspects of the course, like geopolitics, it will be really important. We've loads of these throughout the book. Um, Again, so geographical inquiry here, I mentioned that actually earlier, so I'm not going to go into loads of detail on that. But just again, fly through this. So this is, again, what I've done is just condensed down information in the book onto slides here, handy for you. So again, the main causes of the Palestine conflict, or the Israel-Palestine conflict, and then we've got various different maps which show the expansion of the Israeli state at the expense of Palestinian land. So that's the official UN partition plan. And then this is the borders after the war in 1948, where Israel expanded their land to at the expense of Palestine. More causes there, and then impacts. Obviously, we've loads of impacts. So quite a lot to talk about there. Proposed response. So again, that's probably new wording for us. So a proposed response or solution to the conflict. So a solution that's been put forward or discussed, but not actually enacted yet. And then a realized response. So the strand is a proposed or proposed and or realized response. So you can do, one. You can do like just a couple of proposed responses that haven't actually come to fruition. You can do some proposed responses and some realized responses as well, depending on the conflict you end up doing. And a realized response is a solution that actually has been implemented as well. And just regards time, folks, because I want to give you Lee a chance to talk here. So, as well as Israel Palestine, we've actually put a second option for a territorial dispute, and we've gone with the Kashmir conflict. I suppose the thinking behind that was just like obviously the conflict in Israel Palestine is just so violent and so visceral, and it's quite traumatic when you actually look at it in detail and look at what's happening on the ground. There's obviously the possibility as well that you could have Palestinian students, refugees in your classrooms in the coming years. So we are conscious of that. So we've also included another option B, which is the Kashmir conflict, just so you have that choice. Kashmir conflict, while it is violent, I suppose the scale of the violence is not the same as Israel and Palestine. But so that choice, I think, just teachers will appreciate. We actually had originally wrote about the war in Ukraine, but like just there's actually quite a lot of Ukrainian refugees in Irish schools, so we said we were better off avoiding it, just not to cause consternation in classrooms. So we think that's a nice feature of the book that you have two options there to cover something that can be obviously quite contentious. So I think I'm going to hand over to Lee now. What Lee's going to do is, Lee is going to, I suppose, show you how to structure potential longer style answers that may come up in the new specification. Do you, Lee, want to take over there?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Niall. Get the kind of clunky changeover done. I'll just make sure that's working. Okay, brilliant stuff. Yeah. So thanks, Niall. That's absolutely brilliant. And jump in at any point. And if anyone has any questions or anything they'd like to add, throw it into the chat function, or even better, the Q&A function. Myself and Niall are more than happy to take those questions as well. What I'm going to start looking at now is teaching students to structure their answers in the new specification, and maybe look at this idea of moving away from this idea of what we might view as a traditional essay in Leaving Cert Geography, like your 30 marker, and the idea of the SRP, because we're kind of anticipating that those ideas are going to be removed from the exam. Before I get into that, I just want to touch upon planning for the new course, because I think it's a key part of the course. The course is obviously, as per the spec, designed for 180 hours of class time. Now, that's important because in my school, we currently get about 230 hours to teach Leaving Cert Geography. That's 3 hours in fifth year, 4 hours in sixth year, which I know is common for schools around the country. And I know we're also very lucky to get that. But discussing this idea with the powers that be and management in my school, this is going to be an issue in years to come. And like, from my understanding, all new tranche subjects are designed as 180-hour courses. And my principal is already kind of signaling towards us in the school that subject departments is kind of signaling to us that the introduction of essentially these new tranche subjects, a new wellbeing curriculum at Leaving Cert, is going to force management's hand in terms of timetabling Leaving Cert subjects. Essentially, what we're being forewarned in my school is that by tranche 3 or 4 with the new Leaving Cert, we're all going to have 3 hours in fifth year, 3 hours in sixth year, which is the equivalent of your 180 hours. And the courses are designed to facilitate that. So just as a word or kind of look to the future there, that's kind of what's coming down the line. With all that in mind, one of the planning documents that comes with a world of change is this planning document here. It's an Excel sheet, and it's myself and Niall went through this for weeks, looking at how can we teach the course across 2 years, breaking it down into how many 1 hour lessons each topic will roughly take and how many 40-minute lessons each topic will take. Obviously, trying to get both of those as close to that 180 hours across the 2 years. It's very difficult. We have this kind of disclaimer in our scheme of work that, this could take, like, the breadth of the course, it's huge. I actually think topics have been added to the course. That's how I feel from it. So we're going to be tight for time moving across the 2 years. So this planning document is available with a world of change. And obviously in the middle of that planning document there, we're looking to address kind of the elephant in the room. Niall has touched upon it yet. We haven't got much information about it, but the AAC. And there is a 20-page document on the applied Leaving Cert Geography project. In that document, it says that the project is, or the AAC is going to take a maximum of 20 contact hours to complete, which is hard it's hard to imagine at this point. We're switching to 40% assessment component in the course, jumping up from 20%. However, the guidance that we're getting, it's only going to take 20 hours of the course. That obviously leaves roughly about 160 hours of contact time to go through all of the topics. It makes it tough. It's going to be fast paced moving, and just it's kind of a forewarning to kind of anticipate that. Also, just a quick thing to kind of talk about at the start, as I kind of briefly talked about it earlier, when we consider how we're actually going to teach this course, what we're going to suggest, or what we're going to do ourselves next year, is to start with our unifying strand. That's our geographical skills. That's your OS maps, your maps of a variety of different scales, aerial photographs, data, graphs, all of your kind of geographical skills that we've talked about so far. We're going to teach those first, and that's going to allow us to integrate those skills across all the topics as we move through them. So it'll be a familiar start for teachers if you start with your skills into your plate tectonics, mountains, volcanoes, earthquakes. Rock cycle is where you'll experience your first kind of change with the course, with the rock cycle kind of being reduced down in kind of depth of treatment. Now, I'm not going to kind of talk about all that now, but just as a kind of guide towards that. And listen, they're just included there. I'm not going to see them, but there's the full scheme of work for the new Leaving Cert Geography course that's included with obviously the package in the book, and also a unit of learning for every single topic on the course. So all of your planning, what myself and Niall, listen, we're teachers. I teach 22. We both teach 22 hours in our school. They are designed for you to download them, stick your school's logo and name on them, adjust it to suit the context of your classes, but to be planning documents for you guys for the new Leaving Cert Geography course as well. So just to keep that in mind. So the nature of the kind of, if we're looking at kind of structuring structuring writing at Leaving Cert Geography, the nature of the junior cycle geography exam has essentially changed the way that we teach our students to write in geography. I'll put up some screenshots here, but we're all kind of familiar with those screenshots. The nature of the exam, we're obviously given those kind of tabled boxes with lines. There's no real marks assigned per question, and the guidance that we've got for our students is that, they should fill the space that's provided to them. That's the kind of nature of the exam. And our understanding of the new course is that the SRP is going to be removed, and looking at other papers for new Leaving Cert subjects, they're structured in the exact same way that this junior cycle geography exam is structured. So the phrase that I like is kind of like the junior cycle geography exam on steroids. I would prepare for the sample papers to look something along those lines. And when we look at a very similar subject to ours, a good indication of this is the sample papers that were released for the climate action and sustainability course. So we are due our sample papers in May this year. For reference, the biology papers, which they're tranche one ahead of us, they were due theirs in May. They didn't get them until I think the start of October, if I'm correct. So being mindful, I don't know how much those deadlines are being hit. But when we have a look at the sample papers that were released for the climate action and sustainability course, that's obviously been run as a pilot program in schools across the country, it should look very familiar to you. It has that very similar structure to the junior cycle geography exam. And it does, even though the exam paper isn't going to follow a set structure like a current does, I'm not envisioning a set of short questions, physical geography, regional, elective option. There is a structure that we can identify from the exam questions that we look at. So like the junior cycle geography exam, like the climate action sustainability exam, the exams follow, or each question in the exam follows a very similar structure. Each question starts with what we'll call a piece of stimulus. So it's usually linking into a student's geographical skills. map, diagram, image, source, graph, reading comprehension, even at junior psychogeography. I don't anticipate seeing that at higher level leaving cert geography, but they're the types of pieces of stimuli that have been inserted into the exam. From that stimuli, students are given a variety of different maybe comprehension questions, and then they'll be given what I kind of like to call a connection question, maybe where the exam is asking students to apply a skill to the piece of stimulus that's been given to them. So every question is different. So we'll have a variety of different or a number of different connection or application of skill questions before the exam questions then start to test students' knowledge. And generally, what we see with the exam papers is that those questions increase in difficulty moving from part like A1 to part A5, if that's what it is in the exam. So I wouldn't anticipate to see that set structure that we have and that I really like about the Leaving Cert Geography exam at the moment, but we still can identify a structure within those questions as we're looking at it. Now, obviously, it's got to be difficult to predict without seeing a marking scheme. But due to that change, we have to consider how we teach our students to write. And the nature of the answer boxes that are provided to students means that developing students' ability to write in a geographic writing style is going to be so important. And you might ask yourself at this point, what does good geographic writing actually look like? Because it's completely different to English, it's completely different to history, it's completely different to politics. Geographic writing is unique. It's short, sharp, concise. It has a different structure to how students write in other subjects, and we have to explicitly teach our students that as geography teachers. So for me, good geographic writing contains three different things: fully developed answers, links to examples, data to support the writer's claims. And for me, that's what we're trying to teach our students. And when students write in the structure, hopefully what we'll see is them improving their marks in the exam. And how I kind of promote that to my students is I teach them the following writing structure. So I teach them a PED writing structure that Niall alluded to earlier, that you'll see in the skills book of A World of Change. So when I ask my students to write in geography, especially junior psychogeography, I ask them to make a point that reacts to the question, explain that point using a number of different sentences based on how long the answer box is, by elaborating on that point, bringing it to a more developed level. And then I asked them to develop their explanations by linking into case studies, examples, data, facts, or figures to support their writing. So I'm going to put this up on the screen. This is my student-friendly kind of slide that I share with my students. I usually teach my third year students this at the start of third year when we start to look at the exam, to teach writing in a structure. I don't really generally focus on it up until this point. But this is the exact same writing structure that I'm going to carry over to Leaving Cert Geography with my students. Obviously, students will be asked a little bit to write at more length at Leaving Cert Geography there. So yeah, a point, state your main argument, direct and address the question. That will be one sentence long. Elaborate on the point that you've made, depending on the size of the answer box, 4 to 6 sentences to fully explain it. Development is where you fully extend your answer. I like to say to my students, where you show off what you know. You need keywords, examples, case studies, statistics. I also like my students to draw simple annotated diagrams to support their writing as a development in their writing there. So that same structure, I've had a great response with my junior psychogeography students in terms of how they're hitting those higher marks on the exam paper. As we know, like, distinctions are quite elusive at junior psychogeography. Those higher kind of mark brackets, if you think about a 9-mark answer where you've got your name, tree, develop 1, 2, 3 slide and scale, develop 1, 2, 3 slide and scale. From my experience, hitting those kind of higher grade markers was more difficult. And since implementing this a couple of years ago, I've noticed an improvement in my students' ability to answer at length in the exam. So where you'll see that in the world of change is in the skills book. So we've got this dedicated section that's Write Like a Geographer. And we've tried to adapt that approach to give students basically writing prompts to enable them to achieve success. Now, looking at the climate action and sustainability exam, I found something that was very interesting as well. So there was 3 sample papers released for climate action and sustainability. Every single sample paper had this type of question at the end. It was an 80-mark question, and it literally says it's an essay style question. So although maybe we were anticipating an essay style question being removed from the Leaving Cert Geography course and maybe seen that kind of junior cycle exam structure, I thought it was very interesting to see this on every single climate action sustainability question, where it really reminded me of our option essays, our geoecology, our atmosphere, all that stuff. And what I really liked about it is that on the climate action sustainability exam, students were given a choice between which essay they answered, which was great. Now, what was also interesting, obviously, we're being guided by how much space students have to write. Students were given 4 pages at 75 lines to write an essay for one of those questions. Now, that doesn't mean that this is 100% going to be on the geography exam, but I just thought it was really interesting. Climate action and sustainability obviously has very close links to our subject. It's a huge part of it. And seeing that on that, thinking about our essay, our option essays, I thought it was really interesting. And so with that information, I went and looked at the climate action sustainability kind of spec, and all of these exam questions that came up or were linked to command words with higher or linked to learning outcomes with higher order command words. And I think that's very relevant when we look at our new Leaving Cert Geography spec. So like the learning outcomes on the new Leaving Cert Geography spec are maybe topics we might have associated with previous electives or options. Like if you look at that in our physical geography, analyze the formation of characteristics of high and low pressure systems impacting on Ireland. It's our atmosphere and weather. Then we've got our geoecology. And obviously we're not studying our geoecology, maybe like our traditional rainforest, but we're studying Ireland's temperate rainforest biome. So we're looking at the geoecology of Ireland essentially, but we've got those command words: analyze, our traditional kind of option essays, investigate a geopolitical territorial dispute, analyze the factors that impact on population change, analyze the 4 freedoms of the EU. Oh, yeah, sorry. So there are kind of higher order command words. And if I was to envision maybe what that might look like on the exam, I could absolutely see an essay being created for these kind of higher order command word learning outcomes, and that being part of the exam for our students. So I kind of just took a walkthrough of that. I was like, what could this actually look like in reality? So I looked at 3.14 that Niall's obviously covered brilliantly tonight. Investigate a geopolitical territorial dispute. Inside the spec, obviously, you get that students should learn about, and you get those 3 bullet points. And from that, I've created a question that I think could be used in a very similar situation to what we see in the climate action sustainability exam. So discuss a geopolitical territorial dispute, include the following in your answer or discussion: a geopolitical territorial dispute, land, maritime, or space, actors involved, causes and impacts of, and proposed or realized responses to. So definitely could see students being asked to write at length for that learning outcome. So to accompany that, what you guys will be sent over, myself and Niall have put together this sample answer for that possible essay that we're kind of looking to plan for and to envision, and then also a PED writing activity for your students to complete to give them opportunities to practice that, which I'm going to show you now on the screen. Get rid of the video there. So when I've looked to structure that sample answer, I tried to structure actually just using the familiar structure for me. So I kind of tried to lean on our geoecology option, or our option for the old Leaving Cert Geography spec. And I've structured it using 5 aspects. An aspect obviously being our paragraph title. And in each paragraph then, under each aspect, I've tried to structure it using a PED structure, because I've tried to envision, okay, if I have to teach my students to write at length about this, I'm going to give them their 5 aspects they can talk about as their paragraph headings. Inside each paragraph, I want it structured using our PED structure to help provide structure to that writing, to teach our students to write in a geographic writing style. And the overarching aim of that is to provide a structure to our students' writing that enables them to access higher marks in the possible exam. So you'll get that full sample answer. That's how we envision it kind of being structured or answered. But of course, giving our students a sample answer isn't going to equip them with the skills to produce answers in that structure by themselves. This exam is not going to be a rote learning style exam. Students will have to build critical thinking skills. They have to build those skills themselves. So that's where we view this Write Like a Geographer section of the book, where we give students a set of success criteria. This is to act as a scaffold for independent practice at writing. And then we give them the space in the skills book to practice writing at length for Leaving Cert Geography. And as we've kind of talked about extensively there, you'll see that in the skills book, we give students success criteria for a possible exam question. I'll put SE. And then really importantly, we had to fight hard for this. Space is at a premium in books and skills book, but we wanted to provide as much space as possible for students to actually practice writing for Leaving Cert Geography, and that space is provided in the skills book. So you'll see all that there. I'm running out of time, so really quickly, I'm not even going to go through this, but I'll just put this up on the screen. The additional resources to support teachers planning with a world of change. It's all there. You get your schemes of work, units of learning, editable lesson plan, PowerPoint. So really importantly, obviously, I work with student teachers, PMEs every single year. And traditionally with books, the books kind of give you this chapter summary PowerPoint. They're not lesson ready. We have developed these PowerPoints that are structured exactly like your lesson will be structured. Introduction activity at the start, learning intentions, prompts to support teacher explanation, diagrams, annotated PowerPoint slides, and it has embedded guided practice, independent practice, and a summative assessment exit ticket at the end of every single lesson in the PowerPoints. What I'm trying to say there is there's PowerPoints planned, ready to be used the next day with your students. Then you get your chapter summary PowerPoints like you do with every kind of book, video links, solutions for every question in the book. You get modeled videos of every geographical skill. So I like to just post model videos of skills to my students on Teams page, especially around this time of the year for my 6 years around the mocks and around their exam after I've taught it to them in the class. You'll see that there, and there's a podcast for every chapter. I'm going to put thank you up on the screen there, but my screen was flashing. I don't know if any questions came in.
There was a question there, Lee. Sorry to interrupt you. Ashley had a question on any info on the AAC topic. We were told there would only be one title for all schools with no choice.
I haven't been told that,
Yeah.
Ashling. Yeah, I don't know if that was passed on your Igidate. I have zero information on the AAC outside what's in the guidelines document, that 20-page document. In the main textbook of the book, I've essentially, or myself and Niall have put together a chapter that summarizes the guidelines for the AAC in student-friendly language, structure of it, what an inquiry log should look like, the 7 steps of an inquiry process for a geographic inquiry. But we haven't got any information on any examples of what the AAC will be. They're
No.
not due for us until September. We're told September, October 2026. So, and then we're to actually get our brief for the students in January 2027 for the students who are sitting the 28 exam. That's all the information. If I had more information, I would probably be the biggest whistleblower of that information. So unfortunately, I don't. And I don't know, I would imagine there's going to be a choice within it, because if you think about just the context of schools, I can't imagine one title be given to the whole country. There has to be choice within that for the students, given the geographic, the economic, any constraints that could stop a school from being able to engage in some sort of research. Yeah.
Any other questions there, folks, just before we wrap it up? You have both of our emails there, so if anything does come up, please, anytime, more than happy to help. Lee and I did do a 3-part webinar series covering Strand 1, 2, and 3 with Tralee, Clare, and Nav and education centres there in the last few weeks. If if you want any information, we could look at rerunning them for anyone who missed them. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about the course or the book, please don't be afraid to drop an email, and we can help you out.
Yeah, brilliant. And listen, thanks so much, folks. I hope everyone has a good term there. We're up to Easter. And yeah, as Niall said, any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. But thanks so much for your time. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the run in for the year.